like I said, I was telling you guys about Rudy. Rudy and I met, what, 10, 12 years ago, Coach? Something like
Yeah,
that?
something like that.
Something like that. And another lifetime ago.
Yeah,
And I used to do some work for Coach, teaching wrestling to some of his fighters. And we've been friends ever since. And we have a lot of mutual friends. I'm still working with Lou Noble, and I'm taking him to Arizona with our group with my son next month. Actually, in 2 weeks, Coach, to
nice,
compete. So that's and we get to hang out with Lou Senior.
nice.
Yeah. So go ahead, Coach. Do your thing.
Hi guys, how's
The
everyone
floor is
doing today?
yours. Say again.
I'm asking, how's everyone doing today? Just, I guess they're all muted, so
Good.
they can wait. And good. So, just to give you a little background on who I am. I used to be a professional fighter. I was able to be a world champion as a kickboxer at some point. Some of you may know who Kung Lee is. I trained with him for most of my professional career. And since then, for the last 16 years now, I've had my own gym and I train my own fighters. I have fighters that fight in high level shows like Bellator and Glory and so forth. So that's pretty much what I do on a day-to-day basis, is that I train people how to become professional athletes and fighters, but I also train a lot of people that just want to have fun working out, learn skills through Muay Thai or kickboxing or MMA. And I think those skills translate to a lot of aspects of their life, not just wanting to be a fighter, because not everyone wants to be a fighter, right? So, to me, just being fit and in shape is a really big start to that. Just being healthy in our mind and our body goes a long way when dealing with any situation. And then obviously, if you know some skills where you can defend yourself if you need to, but really it comes down to empowering yourself to be confident in a situation where you might have to do it. For the most part, you don't want to. I don't know if anyone can see my Karate Kid hat on. This is Mr. Miyagi. I don't know if anyone watches Cobra Kai on Netflix. Anyone watch Cobra Kai on Netflix?
Coach, I just was telling them, I was telling them that I'm going to actually probably take a day and make them watch the original Karate Kid.
The original,
right?
Yeah.
With Ralph. So we were literally just talking about this. It was like, why train to fight, right? Yeah. So you don't have to fight.
Exactly. That's the point. And the new series, it's fun, it's entertaining. I don't like it as much as the original because of that point. It's really teaching the ethics of being a martial artist, and being a martial artist is understanding that you possess a skill that where you're more powerful than someone, but having the ability to choose when and when not to use it, instead of just being a bully or forcing it on someone. So, that's a big part of what I teach on a day-to-day basis. So basic skills of what I do. So, again, I myself was a professional fighter for 10 years, won world title. So I translate what I learned, and I continue to learn as a coach, passed down to my fighters and my students. What I teach is, for the most part, within the MMA, which most of you probably have heard of, mixed martial arts. I teach. My specialty is Muay Thai. So it's Thai style kickboxing, where you can use punches, kicks, knees, and elbows. If you've watched UFC, you've seen aspects of that. I also do jiu-jitsu as a hobby and part-time, just so I can understand that aspect of fighting as well. I've been doing that probably for 10 years as well. So all that becomes part of your overall martial arts training. But again, learning the skill and then being able to use it is a different thing. So then you have to incorporate into real life drills. So all my students, even if they're just doing it for fit, are actually learning a skill on how to fight, and which can translate in how to defend yourself. I will say this: learning how to fight and learning self-defense are two different things, right? Generally, in the street and in situations or potential altercations in the street is much different than a sanctioned professional sporting event fight. And you need to treat them differently, right? I train people to engage and to beat each other up in the fights. In self-defense, you want to make sure that you're safe, right? And a lot of times it goes beyond just using your fists and your feet in self-defense. You have to be aware of what your situation is. And I think for me, that's a big part of training. It gives me the confidence. I don't ever really feel that threatened. One, I know I can defend myself if need be, but just a daily training and feeling confident in a martial art, you walk around just kind of different with a different air, and you become less of a victim that way. Let me see. Just to give you some more background on me, I grew up in Boston. I grew up in a very diverse neighborhood. Many times I was the only white kid in my group of friends. A lot of times I was singled out because of that. And a lot of times I was forced to defend myself because I was singled out. All right. And even then and this was before I started doing martial arts as a kid, I learned I had to kind of carry myself in a way that people would not single me out and bully me, right? And that just became a thing where I had to be confident. I wouldn't allow people to push me around, and that led to some things. Later, as I learned martial arts, then I learned I don't even have to engage in these confrontations. I can just walk away from many situations because I feel confident that I can take care of myself if someone was to confront me.
Coach, we just spoke yesterday about being in potential situations where you have to fight.
Yeah.
And about the people at the Capitol building that they possibly were thinking for the first time in their lives, hey, I might have to fight my way out of this situation.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously that was a really, really bad situation, right? Not just for the individuals there, but for our country as a whole and our psyche, to have Americans fighting Americans over what they perceive as right or wrong. Really, there should have been, before that ever happened, a dialogue and conversations and things where someone there to dissipate that energy. Unfortunately, there was not, right? So obviously, sometimes you just cannot get out of a situation. Say you're walking home from school and a group of other kids confront you. You can run, and that's, in our mentality and our society, that's considered weakness, but a lot of times it might be smart, right? There is times and situations where if you can get yourself out of a situation without being hurt, that is the right thing to do. And a lot of people in that Capitol insurrection that were in the crowd probably should have walked away. They probably should have walked away when people next to them are chanting hate speech or saying they're going to do some harm to other people. That's when you have to decide, am I on the right side of this situation or not? If you're ever attacking someone, then you're probably on the wrong side of that situation, right? But then there's the people on the other side, right? And obviously they had to defend themselves, and the very few Capitol Police that were there were put in a situation where they were outnumbered, and so then that's when you have to be smart again, right? Do you stay and fight a losing fight, or do you live to fight another day? And that comes back down to training and intuition, right? And how do you train intuition? Again, it's from training a skill set, right? Now to the point where, I've been doing this for 25 years. I punch and kick people 3 days a week. I know when imminent danger is coming towards me. I feel people's energy, and I feel what they're trying to do to me, and I'm more aware of what they're trying to do to me. So that's a large part of training consistently, is that you become more aware of outside yourself, right? Some people just walk around, well, I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, boom, they get sucker punched because they just weren't aware of someone's energy next to them that was perceiving that. So, again, it comes down to learning a discipline and from that discipline, it expands out to creating a bigger awareness of yourself and then your surroundings. Coach Brahman asked me to think of a story of self-defense. And I don't, again, growing up, I was singled out a lot. I was also put myself in situations I probably shouldn't have been. I'll say one time I was in a situation where a group of kids attacked me, right? Now I probably had something to do with that as well. But I wanted to fight. and it came down to me fighting probably 10 kids. That's not a very good ratio for success. So one thing happened. I wrestled in high school for a couple of years. I was never at the level of Coach Brahman, but I early on I learned I needed to have another skill set instead of punching people in an altercation. So I wanted to learn how to wrestle, and I liked the competition aspect of it. So anyway, back to the story. I had wrestling as a background. So these kids attacked me. And the first thing I did was shoot a double leg on one of them, picked him up and slammed him. And as the rest of the kids jumped on me to try to kick me, what I did is I used the other kid that I had taken down as a shield. So I rolled over, bear hugged him, and all his friends essentially kicked and stomped him instead of me. And then police arrived and it all dispersed. So I actually came out of that situation unscathed, which was fortunate. It could have really gone a different way. Luckily, I did have that training. Like my instinct at that point was to shoot a double leg because I had wrestled for 2 years, and that was my instinct when I was confronted with someone. And luckily I had done that, and I was able to hold that guy. If I would try to stand and fight with this kid, then I would have had his other 9 buddies punching and kicking me from the other angle. So that's, again, where it comes from, learning a skill and learning a discipline, and then having that skill translate automatically, intuitive, right? I tell my students across the boards, whether they're just doing kickboxing, cardio kickboxing class, or whether they're fighting, repetition is the mother of learning, right? If you want to be good at anything, you have to train it. You have to drill it. You have to repeat it over and over again until it becomes intuitive, where it becomes natural, where you don't have to think about it. Has anyone ever heard of the 10,000 hour rule? No. So it's a rule that I forget who came up with it, but
Malcolm Gladwell kind of made it. Malcolm, he put it in vogue, but yeah, other people talked about it before him.
If you want to master anything, whether you want to be a concert pianist, if you want to be a high-level wrestler, if you want to be a doctor, if you want to be anything, you have to put in 10,000 hours to master that. And what does that mean? That translates to, I believe, 5 hours a day for 10 years to master something. Once you put that work in, then you become a master. So if I translate into my sport and combat sports, there's a reason why people like Floyd Mayweather, some considered him the greatest boxer of all time. I differ, but
who is that? Who is the greatest of all time?
Muhammad Ali.
Because he told you he was the greatest. That's why.
There's a lot of reason, and there's other people underneath him before I get to Floyd, but that I digress, right?
We can debate on that later.
Yeah. So, guys like that, they had an amateur career where they've had, they start where they're 12 years old and they have 100 amateur fights. And by the time they're 22, they put in that 10 years, 10,000 hour rule. They become a master. And now their physical prowess and everything has to catch up. So say you guys, probably average age here, Coach Brahman, 14 to 17?
15, 16.
15, right? So if you say, this is what I want to do in my life right now, right? Say you know what you want to do in your life. You're going to have to put about 10 years of 5 hours a day of practice to be a master in that profession or whatever else you want to be.
And if I could add to that, Coach, I would say it's even deeper than that. It's not just practice, it's deep practice. It's not just
Yeah,
like surface level practice. It's a deep level of practice to get to that expertise.
absolutely. And I'm sure Coach Brahman has probably the same said the same thing to you guys that I say to my people a lot is it's not practice makes perfect, it's perfect practice that makes perfect, right? And that's why it's good to have a good coach and someone that can help guide you. Doing stuff on your own, you're going to do a lot of stuff that might not be conducive to what you want to learn. But so again, like if you want to be great at something or you want to master something, if you want to be an artist, you just got to work daily at it, right? And so for me and my skill set, even though I retired from fighting 16 years ago, I still train with my fighters because I still want to be a master of what I do. And really, I didn't become really good until I retired because I actually, when I started fighting, I started fighting later. I learned as I went. But once I retired, I actually had put that 10,000 hours, and I got better as a coach, and which was helpful to my students. So, little story again, how I translate it. But I'll tell you this. So I grew up in Boston. I grew up in the inner city. I had those situations come up a lot. Once I started fighting, once I started training actively to become a fighter, I never had a street fight ever again in my life. I never, only maybe a couple times that I even feel threatened to where I might have to. And a lot of that really boiled down to my ego and my fear in a situation. Again, a lot of times I got into altercations because someone stepped on my toe or looked at me wrong, or I felt that they were threatening me, and I felt like, okay, in order for me to not be challenged in a situation, I had to step up first. Where once I started to learn how to actually fight and defend myself, I was a lot more confident. I didn't need to interact in those situations because I felt pretty okay that I would be able to win in a fight with someone. So I didn't need to. And that
And you're able to shrug stuff off like that much easier when you have the confidence. It's like, well, if
absolutely,
what's it? Yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, there's no reason for this. This is not really a situation where we need to fight.
Right.
I was, and actually, yeah. Now that I think about it, there've been a couple situations since then, or in the last 20 years, where someone, was acting out of line, and I was able to go, listen, man, like this is not necessary. You need to just walk that way, and I'm going to walk this way, because I didn't have to prove anything to myself. I didn't have to prove anything to them. And again, that comes with confidence that I'm strong within myself, no matter what the situation is, and I don't need to feed someone else's fear or anger. I can walk away. But again, if they felt like they needed to take it further, then I'm not worried about
Well,
it.
and part of the reason I want to have you on, Coach, is because I want them to have a different perspective. Most of these children, including my own children, really don't know anything about that life,
Yeah.
and and um, and so I want them to have the understanding that this
Yeah.
can happen.
And I think it's important to understand that, right? Like, obviously, my life is much different than it was back then. A lot of times, like I said, I put myself in situations where it was my choice to be in a bad situation. Just like, say, I believed the election was stolen,
Hmm.
right? And I wanted to apply to to show my support for that cause, right? I'm putting myself in this bad situation. I'm putting myself in this. And then once I start hearing, again, if I start hearing voices next to me, acting or calling for violence, then I have to be aware of my situation. And even then, I may, even if I say, okay, listen, I don't want to be here, but all of a sudden things happen. You need to be aware. And the truth is, we are in a very fragile time in our country, and there a lot of people have disagreements, and a lot of people are being vocal about it, especially on social media, and that can translate to a situation if you're ever outside. My best thing is don't talk politics or religion at the dinner table or pretty much anywhere else except for people where you feel like you're friends and you can have a real open and honest conversation, right? Because people unfortunately take things very personally, and those things can escalate just like they did last Wednesday, because those people believe something wrong had happened to them and they wanted to fight back. The truth is, if they had an open and honest conversation, and were willing to listen, they probably would have gotten facts that disputed what they were angry about and said, you know what, this is probably not the best idea. But unfortunately, that didn't happen, and things escalated. So, you're in Palo Alto, right, Coach?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Palo Alto is a beautiful city, but it's not immune to it. There's East Palo Alto. There's other things that go on in the Bay Area. Again, you can always be put in a situation where you might not feel comfortable. And that comes down to, again, training, conditioning to yourself to where you're aware and you are physically fit to maybe run if you can, or maybe fight back if you have to, right? And those things are important. And it doesn't mean you're an aggressive or angry person to do that, right? Some of the nicest, gentlest people I've ever met in my life are high level fighters and athletes. And I really believe it's because they've had that training that they don't have that aggression. We get it out of our system working out every day, training as a sport and as a martial art as honor, not as violence, right?
Absolutely.
Anyone have any questions?
Come on, kids. Maya, I know you have a good question.
Me? I don't know. Like, what if the person's way bigger than you or something? Like, how do you, like, have the confidence to fight them? Because, like, you're going to lose.
Well, that's not necessarily true. You don't know you're going to lose. If you believe you're going to lose, guess what's going to happen? You're going to lose, right? And again, like, I don't want to come here and tell you to fight someone, but there are lots of ways and strategies in fighting. Again, that's what comes from daily training. Like, oh, if this person say they're bigger than me, then I don't want to try to wrestle them. They're probably going to be too big or strong than me. But there's also, like I said, I've done jujitsu. Jujitsu is the art of using someone's strength against them. It's called the gentle art. I can trap them. I can submit them and control them without them being without me being bigger than them or stronger than them. So there's a skill set in that, and you have to learn it. Also with Muay Thai, just learning how to understand your range. And what does that mean? Like if the distance between two people, right? If they want to get close, I don't want to be close. I want to be here. So how do I keep them here even when they're trying to come get me? And that's called range. And I can use what's called a teep or a front kick, push kick, like you're kicking down a door. Keep away, they're trying to come forward, you kick them in the belly, they go over. Then you can decide, do I still want to engage with this or do I book it out of here? And there's nothing wrong with backing down from a fight if you have to. There's nothing wrong with that. If someone grabs you and physically assaults you, that's when you have to, use that skill. And there's, like I said, there's certain ways. Even if they grab you, there's things you can do with their lapel and their collar to submit them to get them off of you. But again, that comes down from learning skill, learning it every day. Jiu-jitsu is a perfect martial art to deal with people that are bigger with you. I train with bigger people every day. Obviously, just because I've been doing it for so long, I'm not concerned, but those people learn those skills as well. Anything else?
Tra, you have a question? Okay.
On the spot.
I was
Go ahead,
wondering,
Tra, go
how
ahead.
did you first get into martial arts?
How did I first get into martial arts? Very early on. I'm old. I may not look it. I'm 40, gonna be 49 this year. So growing up, yeah, it feels like I was just you guys' age. But growing up, there was a thing that was aired on Saturdays called Kung Fu Theater, and it would play old kung fu movies, like the ones that are dubbed, and it looks really funny. But I loved them, right?
Yes.
My dad also introduced me. He was really big fan of samurai movies. So at a young age, I started watching kung fu movies and samurai movies. A lot of it was based off, early on, the original Star Wars, A New Hope, came out when I was 6 years old. And I absolutely loved that movie. And the New Hope Star Wars is actually based off of samurai movie called The Hidden Fortress. So my dad was like, oh, you love this, why don't you check out these samurai movies? And it kind of blossomed from there. And then so then as a kid, I'd act like I could do Kung Fu, had no idea what I was doing. So then when I moved to Boston, when I was 10, my dad was like, okay, this kid needs an outlet. He needs to learn some skills. And he put me into martial arts, into Kung Fu. And I actually, at the age of 13, this is a long time ago, I traveled to China and trained in China for a month. And we were one of the first groups of Americans to go to mainland China. It was 1986. It's a long time, guys. But I trained in the Forbidden City every morning. I trained with the Beijing Wushu team every day, which is their national team. I just fell in love with it, and kind of everything blossomed ever since.
That's super cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was wild. I mean, obviously, as a kid growing up loving Kung Fu movies, and all of a sudden you're training in the Forbidden City every morning. It was like, I'm living a Kung Fu movie. It was great.
That's great. Good story. Yeah. Okay, so I have a question, Coach. What is like the number one self-defense technique you would teach somebody, a child this age? Somebody's trying to come, one of the things I talked to them about yesterday was about distance control. And if somebody makes you feel uncomfortable, they shouldn't even get close enough to touch you.
Absolutely.
But go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, Coach, finish.
I was just going to say, what would you say would be the number one sort of self-defense technique? I'm already thinking about breaking locks and that sort of thing, and like being able to rip away and run. But what would you say is number one, and can we learn it real quick?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the push kick or the teep is something good that can give you a distance. People aren't, on the street, aren't really used to someone kicking them. And I can display it. Let's see if I can display it. Don't look at my messy apartment. So a push kick is this, right? Someone coming at you and you're kicking them away. It's different than a snap kick where it just snaps at you, but you're like kicking down the door. So someone's rushing at you, you kick down the door, and then you run.
It's harder to catch a foot like that than it would be, because we were talking yesterday, and I was simulating your switch kick stuff. I learned a lot from you guys, and I was talking about really not wanting to kick above the waist, because I'll catch your leg and take you down. Come on, kick somebody in the face. You don't have that skill. So the push kick is a better kick because it's harder to catch that foot too.
Faster straight line, right? Quickest between 2 points is a straight line. Again, most people on the street aren't used to round kicks either, but that's engaging, right? That means you're wanting to fight. You're not defending yourself. Defending is someone's trying to attack me. I'm trying to dissipate that attack or get away, right? So a push kick is a real good basic kickboxing or Muay Thai technique that will give you the space and distance to then decide what do you want to do. If you feel like you have to still engage to defend yourself, then you've given yourself the distance to that. If it's like, okay, it's time to get out of here, then you've done the same thing.
Okay, can we learn that? Because with some like a step-by-step teaching, can you run us through that? Give us.
Yeah. So I mean,
push kick. Everybody stand up. Let's go. This is a PE class, Coach. So we got to get. So most important thing is to have a strong base, right? Your feet, hip width is your strongest base. If they're closer together, you're not going to be as balanced. If you're too wide, all right, you're not going to have the same power and momentum in your hip. So feet underneath your hips. So the easiest way is to start with one leg forward, all right? So everyone have one leg forward. Now, say someone's coming to rush you. All you need to do is to lean back. If you lean backward on your back leg, your front leg naturally wants to come up. So everyone try that. Lean back, front leg comes up. Now, obviously, I want my hands up too, just in case they get past it and I can bend like this. So once I lean back far enough, my leg naturally comes up and I just want to extend it out. All right. Lean back, extend it out. Yes, lean back, extend it out. And at the same time, I'm going to keep my hands here. My same side I'm kicking with, my hand is going to come up. Again, just in case they come back. All right. The next thing would be if they say they come too close, I can't get my leg up, would be called what we call is posting. I'm not pushing them backwards. I'm pushing myself backwards. So everyone do that. Get their hands up. And then you're going to use your lead hand, whatever leg isn't forward, to push yourself backwards.
Yes, reset. Again, push yourself backwards and reset. One more time, push yourself backwards and reset. Good. So here I have two ranges. I have long range and then I have medium range, right? So if they're coming in, they're far away, long range, I can push kick them. If they're coming too fast, too quickly, then I can post. So again, if I want to be offensive, I can step back in, throw combos, right? Or if I want to disengage and run, I can do both of those.
Love it. Love it. And we can start working on both of those techniques in class and just get a lot more repetition with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, repetition is the mother of learning. There's an old Kung Fu saying is, 1,000 kicks a day. So if you want something to be intuitive where you don't have to think about doing that, you got to do it a lot, right? So if you practice that 100 times a day, it doesn't have to be 1,000 for 3 days a week. Eventually, after a few months, you catch up.
Awesome. What would you suggest to somebody who's inspired to want to go and learn more about martial arts and defense and
it'd be great if gyms are open right now.
Yeah.
Schools are open. But obviously there's a ton of stuff on the internet that you can look at. There's a lot of different martial arts. I've actually trained in a lot of different martial arts where before I really focused on Muay Thai. But yeah, you can just Google Muay Thai, MUAYTHI, if you want to see what that sports entails. If you want to look up karate, do that. But there's a lot of avenues and there's a lot of different aspects of martial arts. A lot of martial arts isn't just focused on the combat sports aspect of it. A lot of it is focused on your well-being, your physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being, how focused you can be. It teaches you discipline. These things can carry on to all aspects of life. The things I learned as a fighter, not the skill, but the attributes to become a successful fighter, I'm able to carry on to other aspects of my life, whether it's my business or my relationships. I've learned from that. So there's a lot of great things that can come out from following a path of martial arts.
That's awesome, Coach. I was hoping you'd take this opportunity to promote the high school wrestling for me and do my job for me. And say, hey, that's America's martial art right there. There's no Muay Thai team at the high school, Coach.
Well, you should have
a wrestling team.
But wrestling is phenomenal martial art, and honestly, the best mixed martial artists are wrestlers. It teaches you how to grind. It teaches you how to work hard every day. Teaches you how to engage and press and push yourself. And that characteristic alone, being able to push yourself past what you think you can do, it carries on in so many facets. And again, I told you that little story about how I had to defend myself. That came directly from wrestling, and I only wrestled for 2 years, right? And actually, when I came back to martial arts and I wanted to become a professional fighter, that base of wrestling was actually my bigger base than my kung fu training as a kid. So wrestle with Coach Brahman.
What else can you share with us, Coach? What other words of wisdom do you have?
Again, this is a crazy time in our life. A lot of us are cooped up in our houses. We don't get to see our friends as much. There's less social interaction. So this is a good time to learn those trades, right? If you're got so many hours, hold on, sorry. If you got so many hours in a day, get off the video games for a couple hours and do something, right? Learn a skill set. There are actual, YouTube pages that will teach you Muay Thai and teach you martial arts. You can just mimic it. All of a sudden you might say, hey, this is fun. Eventually, when they open up gyms and everyone's safe and to go out again, maybe I want to join a martial arts gym, or maybe I want to see what Coach Brahman's wrestling is all about. Take that time to explore other things than just what you normally do. I know, again, we're inside a lot, and there's a lot of things that we don't want to do or we can't do. But there's also an avenue you kids have more than what Coach Brahman and I have is the internet, and there's just a huge tool to learn new things. And so take those time to learn something new.
Hey man, thank you. I so
You got it.
appreciate your time. That was great. We got to get together when this thing is over.
Absolutely. Kids, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Coach,
Coach, good to
take
see
it
you.
easy, buddy. Take it easy.
Sure.
Okay, kids, you guys stay on for a second.
Thank you.
And that was awesome. I'm going to stop the recording.